line at WPVM FM. And record back up some files and try again. We're having a slight problem with that, but we'll come back to that. And I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in the Asheville area. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guests of this special show, Judy Calabrese. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
Finally, okay. And Chris Medrano. And I'm not sure yet if we're on Facebook Live, but if we are, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world.
Hello.
We're going to check them on that in just a second. But I should mention that Judy is a creator, producer, writer, and performer with Wet Productions. Chris is also a creator, producer, writer, performer with Wet Productions. And the first question I'm going to ask you folks, before I give you background, or I'll ask the question first, is what is Wet Productions?
Wet Productions is our production company, and we specialize in erotica. So sexually and sensually explicit storytelling in all its forms. So that would be poetry, narrative, improvisation. We even are doing a segment with visual art, any kind of storytelling. That's what we're interested in. We also co-produced the play that I did at Diana Wortham called It Didn't Happen, an Erotic Odyssey, which was my first full-length play that Wet Productions co-produced along with Cauldron Theater.
And what got you into starting a production company?
We both have been creating material, erotic material, for years. We wanted to see it on a stage in Asheville.
Yeah,
And
we're both New Yorkers, so this kind of thing happens in New York, and we thought it was about time we bring it to Asheville. And we want to create, as I think Gandhi said, create what you want to see in this world. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, I should mention now, in terms of the background, Judy Calabrese writes and performs autobiographical work. She co-founded Wet Productions in 2015 with her partner, Chris Medrano, and she debuted her play, It Didn't Happen, an Erotic Odyssey, at the Asheville Fringe Festival, which I saw in 2019, and went on to produce it at the new Diana Wortham Tina McGuire Theater this past October. She is mother of 3 children and is currently working on her forthcoming memoir. Chris Medrano is a musician, performing artist, and audio and acoustic engineer. He's currently developing several podcasts. His most recently performed, he co-wrote and co-directed Magie, is it?
La Magie, yeah.
La Magie, Monsters Under the Bed, which appeared in the 2020 Fringe Festival. Hopefully it'll grow from there.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a production. When you were a kid, Chris, did you always know you wanted to be in as performer, writer?
I did. I used to pretend I was a subway car, and I had a gold chain, and I would race around my parents' Brooklyn apartment, pretending to be the L train in Brooklyn. And
you were 19 at the time?
yeah, right. No, I was 6 or 7, and I always wanted to act. I always sang. My parents had like a very, like, Sinatra and Bing Crosby, and I used to put on shows for them, singing along with these like classics, and I always performed, and it was always important to me, yeah.
Do you remember the first thing you were ever in?
The first thing I ever was in was
yeah.
like a high school play that we all co-wrote together. That's not true. There was like another one earlier that I was in. It was like an Anne Frank's Diaries
Okay.
With music?
adaptation.
With
There was
music?
no music. That was like in the 6th grade, I think. But then there was one that we were really proud of that we all co-wrote together as a group in high school, and then performed with music, like rewriting Great Balls of Fire, other songs, and telling a story. It was really wonderful.
Now, do you have a video of that?
It was the 80s,
A
Blaine.
video has surfaced.
Oh, wow.
I think a friend of mine named Mark put up on YouTube with like with a hidden link, Sing 1992.
That's awesome.
Because
I want to see that.
Chris, I have the idea, though, and I've shared it with other performers. I want Judy to hear this as well, is we should get everybody together. We could do it a Wet Production. Everybody would do their first show,
Oh,
you
my
know?
God.
It doesn't have to be the whole show. It could be 5 minutes of it.
Like actually live or
Yeah,
video?
exactly, yeah. We'd
Oh.
show it at Magnetic, Attic, Salt, you name the
My
theater.
first show.
But wouldn't that be
That's
cool, though? You know,
interesting.
and everybody would just do
I love that
little
idea.
bits, exactly,
Mhm.
to relive your first show. So that was your first show. Judy, do you remember your first show?
Yeah, it was the Children's Hour. The Lillian.
I know it, yeah.
Yeah, what's her name? Lillian. Oh, shame on me.
Hellman.
Hellman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
light musical comedy.
Oh my God.
I was going to say
You
that.
know what's really weird too? We did it at my all-girls Catholic school, and I was the suicide girl who kills herself. Yeah,
How
and they
old-
like carried me out, and I was afraid they were going to drop me.
How old were you?
I was 15.
Yeah. So same thing too. Do they have a record of that somewhere? Or you ever see it?
No.
But wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, let's do that.
And we carry out. I digress a second. It reminds me. I once saw Oklahoma, and they carry out poor Judd is dead, and they dropped him, and he goes grown, and so now he's really dead.
Yeah.
So if you want to see Judy,
Yeah, they actually dropped me on opening night.
Did
They
they
did.
really?
Yeah,
Really?
they did. Yep.
Oh,
It was
right.
3 performances. They dropped me on opening night. So
Well-
that won't be happening if we do it.
well, were they trying to get back at you, or because it was evil?
It's something about like what you fear,
Will happen,
It will
happens.
happen. Yeah, so that's what
Oh,
happened.
is that terrible? Anyway, so that's the idea. Keep that in mind for a wet production. Everybody comes in and does
Yeah,
their
first.
first
that.
show ever. So that got you into the acting bug. What-
No, it didn't. No. It did not. I did a play after that. I don't remember what it was. And then I swore off acting. I didn't like theater people. In college, I studied creative writing and women's studies. And I had no interest in theater at all, 0. And then I refound it in my mid-20s and decided to dedicate my life to it. My parents were not supportive of me doing any kind of acting and that's all I wanted to do as a child. And so it pretty much shut me down until I sort of moved out, went on my own and said like, this is my life, I need to do what I want to do.
And Chris, I guess you were lucky because your parents were supportive of it.
To a certain degree.
I mean-
I had piano lessons.
Me too, I
They
had
were
piano
like,
lessons.
but I had a similar experience with the theater people, my entry into acting was I decided to become a film major so I could get on camera and that was how I got in. So it was hard. My parents were supportive up until a point, but then they were also like, "Can you be normal?"
Yeah.
Well,
They just-
Judy
yeah.
said something interesting too. You said in terms of your parents, so you're now the mother of 3 children.
Yeah.
Or if they wanted to go into theater, what would be your reaction?
Hell no. Over my dead body. No. I have a daughter who's a singer-songwriter. I have another daughter who's a visual artist, and we have a 6-year-old who's definitely headed for some
Something.
kind of, whether it's stand-up comedy or whatever.
Or Dada.
But yeah, they're all, especially my oldest and youngest are really performers. I bless them, I'm the mom who will take them if they want to go. But they would have to really want to, as opposed to like, I'm not going to be some stage mom, like, get out there and audition. That's not me.
Yeah, it has to be directed from our kids.
Yeah, it has to be a real burning desire from them, yeah.
Okay, really cool. So you then got back into acting, performing.
Yeah.
And I guess, so what happened then, from then until I saw you in the one-person show, it didn't happen, Erotic Odyssey.
Oh, a lot of misery, actually. I was auditioning. Well, I really made a living doing voiceovers. That's when that's when me and Chris got together. Also, he started producing my voiceover commercials and all this stuff. But I refound acting, but it was really hard to make a living. So I was like waiting tables and temping and doing all those things. And I decided, you know what? I can't do this anymore. It's too hard in New York City. It's just hard. And I found myself getting really sad and sort of not believing in myself after, endless beer commercial auditions. And it was a grind that I couldn't do anymore. And then I fell in love. I was married previously and I had a child, and giving birth to her birthday was yesterday, she's 16. Giving birth to her woke something up in me. I was like, I don't know, something that knows that I am a creator woke up. And I started writing again, and I started imagining that I wanted to produce my own work. Now, I was 36, and I didn't actually get back up on a stage again until I was 42, because that's how long it took for me to dig myself out of my self-imposed ditch. And then by that time, my marriage had ended, and Chris and I got together, and our partnership really inspired me and gave me the confidence to sort of rebirth myself as an artist that writes and produces her own work.
And is that when you came up with the idea of the it didn't happen?
No. My first show was at the Asheville Fringe in 2013 called Tomandote Drink Me. And it was a true one-woman show where I played 17 characters in 23 scenes. It was
It was
crazy.
intense.
It was ambitious and crazy.
I just ran tech, and it was
No, you did
amazing.
more than run tech. He was the wind beneath my wings. He was everything, you know?
The
My director,
transformations. Your transformations were amazing.
Yeah.
It was-
So how come we never saw that? Did we ever see that again?
No, I thought, well, how am I? Oh, I had a baby.
Yeah, that's-
5 minutes after the show closed, I had a baby. No, I didn't know I was pregnant, and we had a baby,
Mm-hmm.
our first child together, and so that took up a couple of years, Blaine.
So then you decided to get back into
Yeah,
acting?
yeah. I mean, it never
always there.
died. It never died. Even when I'm like, postpartum, nursing a baby, I was like, oh, we got to do another show.
Well, let me
So-
ask the both of you, because I give you credit in terms of not only acting and performing, but you also write. And I guess, Chris, do you have a preference as to different things you do? You're also a musician, too. Do you have a preference as to what you like doing?
I have this conversation a lot, which is
With yourself?
with myself, with other performing artists who have multiple interests, which is the jack of all trades, master of none. I'm really good at this, so maybe I'll just stick to music. But I have so much desire and
Yeah.
interest in doing stand-up comedy and doing podcasting and doing storytelling from a stage and doing, acting on film. So, which one do you put your effort into? And in the last I feel like the last 3 years, I'm starting to feel good results from all of the places I'm.
Putting your effort. Yeah.
And so I feel like if you're a multi
You say it
venue-
talented. Say multi-talented.
multi-talented, but if you're an artist with multiple outlets that you want to explore, I think it's a longer threshold
Oh,
to
that's
get to a
interesting.
level of mastery that you feel like, oh, my work is finally paying off. This is what I want.
Because you're doing all these different things kind of at
Because
once.
you can't
Yeah.
play just bass if you're also, well, now I got to go to acting class, and now I got to do my exercise because I have this thing I'm doing with it's,
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
Well, it's
And it's
what
beautiful.
I tell a lot of performers I work with, and I certainly tell the both of you, I guess you also need to have a roller skates with you, too, to
Hell yes.
to do 17 different things
It's so true.
simultaneously and be a father and
Yeah.
all these different kinds of things.
And nowadays, the self-promotion aspect, I mean, you have to be like a 4-hour a day, 6-hour a day
amazing.
multimedia promotions expert on social media and other things just to get people to your show, to
Yeah.
get seats
It's-
filled. That's a whole job in itself.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because to Judy's credit, I give you credit, because I think you do that very well.
Thanks.
And I tell the line, Chris, which I find a lot of performers don't do, but it's from Ken Blanchard. And he says, if you don't toot your own horn, somebody else will use it as a spittoon.
Oh my
you
God,
know?
it's so true.
But you really
love
have to.
that.
But what's amazing, Chris, I find, and talk about why this is so, a lot of performers don't seem to want to do it. That they're the actor, they're the performer, and that they shouldn't have to promote themselves.
Well,
do
it's-
you ever hear that?
It's contrary to the art form in a
Right,
lot
exactly.
of ways, right? One of the reasons I never didn't get into theater, because I was like, why are there theater people always seem to be like, and I'm doing this, and I'm like, oh, to me it was always very personal. And I was like, I don't need to go shouting to the rooftops that, I am an actor, which is how I see the craft, really personal, really quiet, and it lives in this, I don't know, this really sort of secret place in me, and it was hard to, and he and I did not grow up in a time when you're shouting from the rooftops, really anything. The way that we were raised, and we didn't grow up with social media, and so it's like, wow, it's a whole new skill set to say, I'm an artist and I'm self-promoting. I mean, if you talk to artists, really, there's a long history of not doing that. I think that's more common than not. Of course, that's changing because it has to. This is the world we live in.
Well, there's also a long history, and I just ran something in Facebook about this, about artists not getting paid.
That's big.
That they should do this, for exposure, the infamous exposure. And the reality is, if you want people to see your show, and again, back to the show you just did, it didn't happen. You did it at the Fringe, but then you did it separately, and you did everything on that one, right?
We
You-
did
you-
everything.
You produced it, you wrote it, directed, and got people to come
And
there.
promoted it, yeah.
But again, you did such a good job, I think, getting people there, because you had nice turnouts.
And if
Did
there's
they?
anybody out there that would like to produce it again, please let me know. Because it was hard to do it. It really was. It was really worth it, but it was immense. And next time I do it, I would like a team of people because I did the job of, I feel like, 8 people.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris is the octopus.
Yeah, you're,
Yeah.
you're one person team. But again, and I think it has to be done, Chris, if you're an artist performer, you have to actually, of course, believe in what you're doing, but you have to invite them to come. Because if
Yeah.
you, because again, I also believe marketing and promotion is high touch, not high tech. You know, so
That's
one of
true.
the things what I love about you, Judy, what you do, you'll say to me, "Hey, are you coming to my show?" Or
Yeah.
you know, "I hope to see you," or something. And I think that's important.
Especially in Asheville, where you have that opportunity to meet with people one-on-one, because it's a smaller community than
Yeah.
like a large city where it's like,
Yeah, it's right. The
Well-
personal thing is really important.
Well, not only in
And-
Asheville.
yeah.
You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's just beautiful that like I'll go to the supermarket or I'll go out one night and I see people that have seen the show or that I've seen their show, and it's just this. I don't know. I love the way that community weaves itself here.
Well, the other thing that's kind of unique about Asheville and ties into what you're doing this week is the fact that there's a lot of other performances in theater and production going at the same time. In other
Certainly.
words, one of the things you won't be bored in Asheville. If you want to find something, you're going to find something. And that ties in, I think, to what you're currently working on, that in your, quote, spare time, you're producing something now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a regular thing.
We're gonna do it quarterly.
Okay.
So the
Quarterly,
next
yeah.
one will be in May.
And what is this thing that's going to be in, actually this week? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Thursday night at
Okay.
8 o'clock. It's the new Asheville Beauty Academy, which was formerly the beloved Tressa's. The owners of Sovereign Remedies have opened. It's a nightclub. You know, it's a bar nightclub. It has such a great feeling in there, and it's called Asheville Beauty Academy.
Don't you love that name, though?
I
Asheville?
love it. I
Yes.
love it.
So I'll get my hair cut?
Yeah, you're gonna get your haircut,
Okay.
and you're gonna get a facial,
And
a little massage,
really? Nice.
manicure, pedicure. No.
if we come see this thing,
I say Asheville Beauty Academy is about beauty from the inside out. That's my tagline for them, because they are really invested in that idea of beauty, of that it comes from within us.
Yeah.
And it was such a match for us because they're also really dedicated for it to be a queer-friendly, LGBTQ-friendly, and sex-positive space, which for us is
Essential.
a dream come true, and essential. And so they invited us to produce our show there, to be sort of an anchor for that message for our community.
and let's talk a little bit, guys, about the show that will be happening. It's this Thursday night?
Yeah, this Thursday, 8
Okay.
o'clock.
And what's the show?
It's called Wet, Sexy Stories, and wet is spelled WHET, as in whet your appetite. And so, the meaning of that is to anticipate this amazing meal. So it's less about the meal and more about the anticipation of the meal, which is what, to us, erotica is. It's thinking about that luscious experience, or, basking in the sensual aspects of a relationship, or, even it could be a one-night stand or any kind of sexual interest you have. It's about the poetry of those beautiful unions.
And one of the cool things you did in terms of getting this event off the ground, you invited the community, I believe, to participate in this or
Yeah.
submit stories.
That's
and
right. It was an open call. Yes.
And so what happened as a result of the
Oh,
open
we
call?
got so many great
Yeah,
stories.
Did you?
a lot. Amazing.
So many beautiful stories. It was hard to say no to people.
Was
you
it?
know?
Yeah.
It was, because they're all, see, the great thing about our show is that they're real, authentic stories written by and performed by people whose experiences they are. I mean, yes, we accept fiction. Mostly we get true stories.
Yeah. Original work.
Original work. It's really exciting.
So a part of this, that whoever wrote it has to perform it?
Oh, yes, that's one of our rules. Yes, yeah, you can't just, I've had people ask, like, can I read my friend's piece, or,
Or the opposite, can you read my piece?
that's right, or can I read Anais Nin? Well, we love Anais Nin, but no, it has to be your piece from you, and you have to have the courage to get up there and perform it, and we help. We highly curate the show. So it's not so curated where it doesn't have rough edges and it's not raw and juicy. It is. It's curated so that the person that gets up there may never have performed before, but it's going to feel, it's going to feel fluid. It's going to feel generous. So we definitely work with all of our performers
We work
to help them
one-on-one,
get there. Yeah.
directing them with their performing, directing them with
Edits
helping
and-
them edit their work and making sure that they're telling the story they want to tell as best as they can.
Yeah.
And we're telling the story, Chris. These are their stories,
Mm-hmm.
but are they all true, or some of them can be made up?
I mean, they're true, or they are there's a certain they're authentic in that, like, maybe it's like a
fantasy.
fantasy that they have that's a honest fantasy that is something that occupies them, that is real for them, you know, like they're I would say they're true stories.
Yeah.
Because also the word story is interesting because some of these pieces are more performance pieces, some of them are poetry. So there is the play in that they are authentic, original, and true. Yeah.
Yes.
How many pieces will be performed approximately?
Seven, but this time we have something really special where we're having a visual story take place from 7:30 till 8. Bonnie Curry is a local artist, and she does these gorgeous, sensual collage art, and it's going to be in a slideshow, and it's all sensual, beautiful images that tell their own story on a screen before
Yeah.
the show. So she's also included. So that would be number 8. But like actual, stories. We have poems. We have structured improv. We have traditional, narrative. I'm doing a sort of spoken word poetry piece. And the unofficial theme of this show is called Sex Church. And
Yeah.
it just happened. We didn't announce it, but all the submissions that we accepted all have a spiritual aspect to them.
Sacred sexuality or things of that nature. that
Yes.
are just
It's beautiful.
Now, will that be every show have a different theme, you think?
Maybe. I mean, we didn't intend this one. We said, look, all these pieces have some kind of spirituality. Wow, we're going to call this show Sex Church. Maybe in May, we'll call it something else. I have this idea of doing sort of a pagan bacchanalia.
ooh, that would work for that time.
That time of year, rites, spring rites and all these delicious things that happen in the spring.
So what is it? You stay up thinking of these
I
ideas?
do. It keeps me up at night. I got to do something with my energy, Blaine.
No, that's really cool, though, because I guess as a performer, writer, whatever, you're always kind of working on something.
It's
like,
true.
One of the things I admire about both of you, and I admire about any performer, is that even though you're working on this, you're also working on 17 other
It's
things
true.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like, what else are you working on?
Well, I'm writing in the middle of writing I just finished writing one book, which was a ghost writing, a collaboration, a one man's life story about really traumatic, horrible things that happened to him, but that he came out, I mean, he's an amazing human being. So I just finished writing that, and we're waiting with bated breath for it to be published, which is really exciting. It's called The Luckiest Boy Alive. And I'm writing my own memoir. It's about sexual awakening. It's about women and aging. It's about sexual identity and how we change and motherhood. And so I hope to be finishing that this year. And so I'm always working on that, and I'm always writing stories. So
And Chris, the same thing, too. What else are you working on?
I'm currently co-writing, co-producing a YouTube series with the Kava Bar, Sovereign Kava.
who's one of our sponsors,
Who's
by
one
the
of
way?
our
They
sponsors,
sponsor our show.
and they're sort of like the Office in a sense. Like it's kind of this improv bunch of people walking around, interacting, and it's comic. It's funny. I play myself, but it's not really me. It's like
It's really
a
funny.
weird losery me who keeps getting hurt at work and stuff like that. It's very funny.
And we're doing a podcast. We also have a wet
and we have the
Productions
podcast, which we just finished editing the first one and should have up real soon.
And what's the basis of the podcast?
Erotic stories and conversations with the people that write them, intimate conversations, vulnerable conversations about what went on while they were writing them, why they chose to write that, and really personal life stories about who they are and how they are in relationship. And that's
The first
format.
one is a story that
Yes.
Judy reads, and then we have a
discussion.
a discussion about it afterwards, and it was beautiful, and it was amazing because we got into things that are very deep and vulnerable in the intimacy of podcasting studio that you can't do.
When I hear some of these stories that go on our stage, I'm always like, well, what happened after that? I want to know more. So that's where the podcast begins. It's like, you have the performer read their story, and then we talk like, hey, how did this happen for you?
It must be cool for both of you to see that people who come forward who are vulnerable,
Oh,
willing to
yeah.
share their stories.
It's amazing.
And sometimes is it, Chris, is the first time they've ever shared their story?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, we have one performer who someone told her about our show, and she was inspired to write a piece for our show. And it's the first time, and it's actually the one and only piece that she actually has. And I've encouraged her to write more because it's so good. And also, one of our poets is a poet, and he had never written erotic poetry before, and heard about our show and wrote erotic poetry for our show.
Because I could see this being a terrific opportunity for people to come out or to explore
Yes.
some of the things that are going in their life
Yes.
in a non-threatening, I guess.
Yeah, and there's so much beautiful acceptance. Like, you have people come up to performers after our show and say, "Wow, like I never heard anyone talk about that live before," or "Wow, that was my experience too," or "Hey, you freed something in me that I was always embarrassed of or ashamed to say," or it's so life-giving and really joyful.
One of the things I'll always remember about your show when I saw it in, I guess, Fringe, was that people would come up to you, and I wanted to congratulate you afterwards. I had to wait like 20 minutes because people were coming up to her, Chris, and they were in tears.
It was
You know,
incredible.
they were saying they couldn't believe the story, and it freed them.
Yeah.
And it's just, that was
It
quite
was
something.
really beautiful.
Get the
Yeah,
reaction that
yeah.
it's moved to tears.
You
Yeah.
know, this show is a relaunch of the show that we did. We did the show from August 2015 until July 2016,
Uh-huh.
and
We did 10 shows
10
in the
shows
year
in
in
Asheville.
Asheville.
Sexy storytelling, and the response. And when we stopped doing it, the response of like, please come back,
Please come back.
do it again.
Emails, people stopping us on the street. Are you that sexy storytelling? I met my partner at your
Yeah.
show, or that was the best date night we ever had, or I mean, it was
But like,
incredible.
I've never heard
Oh, right.
that a story that allowed me to be myself more than what I saw on your stage. Things like that it was so moving to us.
Because everyone's like, well, why talk about sex? Sex is everywhere, but this is not it's not porn. It's really authentic, raw experiences that are vulnerable and beautiful and self-reflective and deep. But they're also really fun. So I think it's a really fun night out. And it's also we go there. It goes there. We're not on the surface, that's for sure.
You mentioned you stopped it for a period of time.
Yeah.
How come you stopped it?
I had to move my entire family back to New York because
Oh.
I wanted to go to grad school. So I did my Master's of Fine Arts at Hunter College and completed my master's degree.
Okay.
And then we came right back.
Okay. So after this show runs, the plan, I think you said, this is going to be a quarterly thing you're going to do
Yeah.
there? All with the same theme?
Yeah, it will always be wet, sexy stories. It won't be sex church. Maybe it will be spring bacchanalia or pagan rites of passage or something really yummy and sensual. And then the next show would probably be in September. So we're going to do it quarterly. We used to do it monthly, and it was a lot, so it was brutal. But we also want to expand the show next time. The Asheville Beauty Academy has 2 floors, and so we want to make the top like a sensual fantasy wonderland event space.
We have
So
some ideas.
We have some yummy
I can
ideas.
imagine.
Yes.
Oh, how cool would that
Yes,
be?
it's going to be cool.
Well, now, will you do the same thing, too? Will you invite the public to submit ideas?
Oh yeah,
and-
it's going to be an open, and it's an open call right now. You can submit your stories to
Right now,
wet,
if you like.
WHET, wet sexy stories at gmail.com, and we're always accepting submissions.
Okay. And so to submit something, is there a length or how long does that have
It
to
should be a 10-minute spoken piece. So whatever it is, if you wrote a poem and you want to time yourself, then make sure it's at least up to 10 minutes. It can be under 10 minutes,
but not over 10
not
minutes?
over 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So the fun thing, they'll see a lot of different things if they come to the show on...
Yeah,
Thursday
many
night.
different things. There's poetry, there's spoken word, there's improv, there's traditional storytelling, there's somebody doing like a movement piece. So many different kind of things.
And so if folks want to see then the sexy story,
Wet, sexy storytelling.
sexy story, again, they can come this Thursday night.
Yeah.
What date is February?
It's
13th.
13. Yeah, the hotter version of Valentine's Day,
I
we're
was going to
calling
say,
it.
great way to get ready for Valentine's
Yeah.
Day. And that'll be at what time?
8 o'clock at Asheville Beauty Academy.
Okay, and lastly, for more information,
You can go to Wet Productions on Facebook, or you can email us at wetsexystories@gmail.com.
okay, I'd like to thank both Judy and Chris for being my guests this first half hour
Thank
on the
you.
Special Blaine's World
Thank
Show.
you, Blaine.
I'm hoping it's on Facebook Live, but we'll see in a little bit. And as they work their way out, I'm going to ask you to stand by because I understand we're going to put you to work in just a little bit.
That's
for,
what
for
I
a
hear.
second.
We
are
have
upset.
volunteers.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so-
Thank you very much for
Yes,
volunteering.
thank you.
And we'll see you in just a bit.
Okay.
Lots of luck in the show. Very
Yeah,
exciting
thank you,
stuff.
Blaine.
And I should mention that support for this show in WPPM is underwritten by the Grill Movie House, Asheville's alternative cinema. The Grill Movie House is an independent, locally owned 3-screen cinema located in downtown Asheville. For current features, visit the Grail website or the Grail social media pages. I'd also like to mention a couple of other things happening in the Asheville area, and they are Coriolanus 2020, directed by Melon Weddick. And that'll be on February 21st and 22nd at the Tina McGuire Theater in downtown Asheville. And you can look for that information. If you look at Tina McGuire Theater or Diana Wortham, you'll find information on that. In addition, the Magnetic Theater is having a Weekend of Love on Friday night. It's the Great American Strip-Off. And we have on Saturday night, that's the Heartbreak Amando Improv Workshop, Saturday, February 15th. For information about that, you're going to go to www.themagnetictheater.org. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest of the Blainsboro Show today, and she is Darlene Kucken, is it?
Kucken.
Kucken, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I should know that by now. And Darlene, before we introduce you, you can wave. If we're on Facebook Live, you can wave to your fans and friends on Facebook. Great.
Hi.
And Darlene is a certified interplay leader. And I should mention that she's a certified interplay leader and has been heavily involved with holding classes and special events for interplay for over 2 decades. She feels passionate about bringing opportunities to people to tell their stories, move their stories, be still, and use the voices to experience more of their inner creative self, all while improvising the moment with a partner. I've been to a couple of interplay activities, and they are quite something to behold. I guess I should ask you, Darlene, you want to move a little closer to the mic.
Okay.
Interplay, first of all, what is interplay?
Well, first of all, interplay is really hard to describe, and anybody who's even done it for decades still has a challenge describing it. But my words of describing interplay are that it is a form of creative arts that allows the individual to really dive into their own inner creative aspects and let that come out through telling of stories using words and body movement and stillness and some song. So it's very a very good way to like really connect that body, mind, spirit aspect that's within all of us.
How'd you get involved in it?
Oh, I got involved decades ago now because I went through a very difficult breakup. And from that, a friend of mine said, you should try interplay. And to be honest, I was a very introverted person. And the thought of going to something like this was beyond me. But I said, well, I got to do something. So I showed up and I thought, as soon as this is too weird, I'm leaving. I'll just walk out. So we started out, and they start out in a big opening circle, and all of this kind of stuff was new to me. Big opening circle, and then we start out doing take a deep breath in and let it out with a sound. Ah. And I thought, well, that's not too weird yet. Okay, so I stuck around. And by the end of that 2-hour workshop, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was really about really taking in and noticing that my energy in the room was important to myself and to the other people in the room. So it was a moment of, aha, I have something to offer. I'm not just a wallflower. I can be something else. And now, look at me. Now you can't shut me up, really.
It's funny you say that because I saw you, I guess, the first time, maybe about 8 years ago in a dance performance. And you don't come across as being this wallflower, type person. You were very open and
Yeah.
and did interplay help bring that?
Interplay definitely brought a lot of that to me, and in growth over time. And so, a lot of what interplay offers is, well, we call it sneaky deep, and there are opportunities within the interplay forms that we use for an introverted person to kind of like, step forward and have the space that introverts don't often get to have. And as we heard in the previous conversation, and there's many examples out there in the world right now, is people need and want to tell their stories and to be heard.
And so interplay helps them tell their stories?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, while we still have our other guests out there,
Yeah.
we can just shift gears a little bit. We want to try something a little bit unusual. And I asked Darlene to talk about interplay, but I asked her to also show it. You know, what is interplay? And you were telling me that it's perhaps best seen to see what it's all about?
Yeah, so we obviously on radio can't do a whole lot of the movement kind of
Well,
stuff.
on Facebook Live, if it's on, they can see it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, so, but I thought maybe we could do a couple of the very basic, simple storytelling type forms.
And if you can get maybe just Darlene Darlene, if you can get our two guests from the first hour, just have them come on in. We're going to try something a little bit different here, folks. But for the benefit of those watching on Facebook Live, if you're watching, we'll hopefully I can see this. And if you're not
Here they
watching, we're
come.
going to describe it. But we're blessed, if you will, to have our guests from the first half hour today, Judy Calabrese and Chris Medrano. And I can see you, which is great. Maybe Chris move a little closer in. And it's going to be cool. I think we can see you, so the mics are on. And Darlene, why don't you explain what we're doing?
Okay, so I lead workshops in this, in the interplay forms, and one of the things I like to start a workshop with is a very simple form called babbling. And so what I'm going to do is we can go back and forth between the three of us. I'm just going to give you a word, and I have not thought about this word. This is off the top of my head because everything we do in interplay is improv, although it might be based on some real stuff in life. But so I'm going to start by giving you a word and just give you like 30 seconds to talk about anything that comes up for you in that word. And the rest of us are just going to listen.
Is it okay that I'm terrified? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So am I.
Okay, good. On the edge.
So for this first word, we always use some kind of basic, simple noun, like just talk to me for 30 seconds about clouds.
I like to lay on the grass and look up at clouds and discover different shapes. People like to see animals, but I see furniture sometimes, people's faces, characters. I do see animals sometimes, but I actually never, wow, that was really incredible.
So I'll give you another word that I'm not thinking of, but I will right now. Tell me something that comes up for you around the word purple.
In the grocery store, I'm looking at the vegetable bin, and there's a Japanese or Italian Japanese eggplant, and it's purple and shiny and smooth, and then I remember a dish I once cooked in my wok where I chopped it up into little cubes and I sautéed it very high heat with some coconut oil and tamari and sesame oil and sesame seeds.
Ding. So I'm going to ask anyone in this room to give me a word.
Oh, I will.
The word.
Doorknob.
Oh, I was in Austria and walking down this very narrow cobblestone street, and they have these amazing doors, and their doorknobs are like handcrafted doorknobs. You know, like we go to Lowe's and we all buy the same thing, right? But theirs are specially made, and this one was the face of a lion, and you pulled its nose for the knocker. It was fascinating. Ding!
I would think, Judy, this would be a great idea for erotic stories to give somebody
It could be scary, Dwayne,
Wouldn't it?
but very exciting.
come up. There's a joke I can't tell on the air, but it reminds me of doorknob. Someday I'll have to tell you a story. But, yeah.
Sounds like something for their
Right.
show.
Maybe off the air, yeah.
Exactly. But neat concept. So what happens when people do that, Darlene? What's the idea?
Well, it's like, again, goes to that sneaky deep concept. Like, as an introvert, I often turn into a sounding board for other people to just lay their stuff on me. And that doesn't always feel good. So here's a moment in which I get, and some of our battling stories can be 2 minutes or 3 minutes long. So you really get the opportunity to have your space. And extroverts really kind of have to learn to listen a little bit more. And so that without the response like that, and we've also told things about each other and made a connection, eye to eye connection usually, made a connection with somebody else in the room, and then bing, we go off and we find another partner. So with each form that we're introducing, you're connecting with somebody else in the room, which creates that beautiful sense of community and belonging, because we end up realizing, oh, we have a lot in common.
You said something interesting about the fact that it's such a short period of time. Do we ever get to hear the end of the egg, the wok story?
Yes, we could, because then there's another form that we do. We call it I Can Tell You About. And we would go back and forth on some theme that's been given. I can tell you about, we never say the complete sentence. So I can tell you about being nervous being on the radio. I can tell you about this amazing waterfall that I saw a couple days ago. So I'm not giving the story, but then the next step might be that tell that story in a couple of minutes. You tell more about that story. And then we also kind of work it to be like, some people can talk forever. So that we also work it into like, now tell that story in 3 sentences. Now tell that story in 1 sentence. And now tell that story in 3 words. So you're really boiling the meat of what you want people to hear down into the essence of the story.
And before I let these guys go, can we let them go, or do we need them for anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank
that
you.
was fun.
So fun.
Okay,
I
great.
learned
Thanks,
something.
guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. What's really interesting about that exercise, and I can just see it, is you also get to meet a lot of different people kind of very quickly.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And people you might not normally see out on the streets or, have at your home.
Well, and I think you've seen that over the years with the Interplay group, that you brought a lot of people together, and you sort of have a regular group of people participate in
Yes.
this. Is that it?
Yeah, typically, we meet the first Friday of every month at the All Souls Church in Biltmore Village in their big hall. And we meet for 2 hours, 6:30 to 8:30. We don't have people pre-register for that or anything, so there could be anywhere from 10 people to 21 people there is, kind of the average. And some of us, there's, there are a few certified leaders in Asheville. And so those people tend to come to most of every Fridays. But then there's always somebody who's never done Interplay before and just says, oh, I'm kind of curious I want to learn how to be a storyteller more.
Well, is that what you say? It's good for people who want to learn how to tell stories? That's a good thing for them
Yeah.
to come to?
And again, we're not always focusing on words. Sometimes we tell stories just with movement, which can be actually very powerful because we can get wrapped up in our words, but telling a story just using some movement allows me to truly embody that story, as well as a lot of what we do in Interplay is we call it noticing and witnessing. So I notice what's going on for me after I've done this babbling exercise or told this story by moving. And for somebody who is witnessing my doing that movement piece, they're staying their own story, but they're also experiencing a real gift that's being given.
Talk a little bit about the process of you becoming a certified then leader, I guess, so
Yeah.
that you can go, but you can also go, I guess, the next step, you can become a certified leader.
Yes.
What does that entail?
Well, it's fairly intensive. I attended a number of concentrated focused workshops. There's a study guide that we use, and we go through and work through that study guide, and we have to practice with our mentor. We practice leading. We have 2 new leaders in training in Asheville right now, which I'm real excited about. And so it's quite a practice. And then we have a big graduation celebration where we throw feathers on each other, and, it's a lot of fun.
Do you enjoy the leading or the participating?
Both. The participating, of course, is like, oh, I get to move, and I get to tell stories, and I get to exform whatever is inside of me using one of the interplay tools of exformation. And then as a leader, I have been struck by some of the beauty that comes forward, either in storytelling or how what somebody said or moved or how they used their voice for toning really touched a part of me. And I've seen people change through the course of a workshop where they come in, kind of tired and, and then they leave and they're exuberant and can't wait to get back out to life.
Have you changed?
Absolutely.
How so?
Some of the tools, pardon me, some of the tools that we use in interplay are like things like physicality of grace and ease, finding ease and affirmation. And those tools practiced over time have really helped me learn to seek out more ease in my life and, let go of the stressful things or finding the grace in my life, the gratitude for all those little things that happen each and every moment of every day.
Things I think you don't think about ordinarily. You just kind of take for granted.
Yes.
But interplay helps you a little bit with that as well.
Yes.
Go back to the class. So you mentioned with Judy and Chris about this one exercise. That's one. Talk
Yeah.
about some of the other things you might do in a class.
Well, now this is an advanced form. It's not a basic form, so I wouldn't do this with brand new people. But my personal favorite form it's called On Behalf of, and I have a partner, and my partner holds out their hands, and I tell a little story in their hands, whisper it very quietly. They don't hear the story, but I'm able to. Oh, let's say I just had a fight with my best friend and I want to just say, oh, I really love my best friend, but I'm also mad and, whatever it is that I want to say. So I'm not exposing my story. Then that person who got that, pardon me, got that little gift in their hands, takes that little story, they don't know what it is, and they do movement on behalf of whatever that story was. And it never fails for me that in that person's movement, where I'm just sitting back, witnessing that movement, there is something in that movement piece that directly addresses my story. It's like magic.
What if you're not creative?
Well, I would probably argue that we're all creative.
Exactly. That's why I asked. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that concept,
Yeah.
though.
Well, we don't think that we're creative. We don't think that we can move. We don't think that we can tell a story very well. And we don't think that we can dance. And really, we all have all of that in us. So that's where, interplay offers these forms that, we can guide through a workshop, guide people incrementally to go through deeper and deeper and deeper places to, connect that mind and body and spirit together, because we all have that. We all started life being very creative little people.
And I think that example you gave was a really good one in the very beginning with that exercise, that everybody has seen clouds. So the way you did it was I think, very enlightening. That you didn't give Judy a chance to think about it and to plot out what she wanted to say. She just did it.
Yes.
Yeah, and she talked for 30 seconds, and Chris spoke for whatever. But I guess that's part of the beauty of it. You just kind of, without thinking about it, you're forced into playing, I guess, a little bit, or being creative.
Yeah. Letting things, I call it bubbling up out of your body. We've all got this stuff in there. It's all wants a place to be, and so, this gives opportunities for people to just kind of like, boom, let it come out. Being creative, improvising in the moment.
It's probably exciting for you as a leader to see some people come out of their shells. Do you see that?
Absolutely. Several years ago, I did a series of workshops across Scotland by invitation from a Scottish friend of
they
mine.
do they do this in Scotland?
Yes, in 6 different countries right now. 60 different cities have interplay groups, with similar to ours here in Asheville, but with some of them have different focuses. But in my experience in Scotland, the people in Scotland were really great about telling stories. They like to talk, right? But move, I could feel there was like a little nervousness in the room when we started some of the movement forms. By the end of that workshop, people were doing a performance jam and just jumping up, ready to move and tell their stories. It was a beautiful thing to witness.
You're coming up with something cool for you to do that I know you love to travel, and you travel all over,
I do.
all over the country, elsewhere as well. That'd be really cool if you could do this at every country, wherever they have. So you've done it in Scotland. Have you done it elsewhere?
No, yeah.
Have you gone to any other even in the United States? Have you done other people doing interplay?
Yeah, well, I got started in the Raleigh-Durham area with the group there, and actually one aspect of interplay can move into performance. So I was actually in the Off the Deep End performance company where we did improv performance using the forms, popping out, supporting each other in that use of that form to give a performance piece. So that's where I got my real start in interplay. And then I moved back to Asheville many years ago and continued.
Now, if folks in the Asheville area want to participate in an interplay program, you mentioned that once a month. Is it the first or the last, or what is it?
First Friday of every month at the All Souls Church down in Biltmore Village, the big old church there. It's a beautiful space, nice wooden floor, and 6:30 to 8:30, first Friday of every month. And that information on that can be found, well, we have a monthly newsletter, so you can go to the web page, interplayasheville.org, and sign up for the once-a-month newsletter so you don't get bombarded, or check into the web page. And we also have a Facebook page, which a lot of people are more comfortable with, and that's Interplay Asheville.
And so people are invited to just come in on the spur of the moment? They don't need to
Absolutely.
which is
No,
nice. They don't have to pre-register. Talk about also, one of the reasons we had come on board specifically today is that you folks are also going to be involved in a big event, I think, coming at the end of this month. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
February 22nd, so not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
And what's that?
It's a very special event. I'm so excited about it. Phil Porter, one of the founders, Phil Porter and Cynthia Winton Henry founded Interplay about 30 years ago. So Phil is going to come here. He's in Raleigh-Durham this weekend, which I'm going to. And then he's coming here next Saturday to do a full day-long workshop for us here. And Phil is extraordinary leader, just has a grace and a style and a way to bring such a comfort and ease in the room, where whether you're a beginner, never done interplay before, this might scare you a little bit. With Phil there will be nothing scary. He just has a real incredible style and, of course, 30-plus years of experience. Phil has also written a few books that talk about the mind-body-spirit connections, and he'll probably have some of his current artwork with him.
And where is that going to be?
That will also be at the All Souls Church, and information about that is on the webpage and on the Facebook page. We would love it if people would pre-register, just so we know how to provide and that sort of thing. But it'll be a 3-hour morning session, a break for lunch on your own, a 3-hour afternoon session, a break for dinner, and for those who just want to be entertained or be entertaining, we're going to do a performance jam in the evening where Phil will call out the name of a form and people will volunteer to pop up and do a little performance piece for us.
And you mentioned the term before, a form. What do you mean by a form?
It's like what we just did here, the babbling, or the I can tell you about, and it's kind of like naming the pieces that we do. Of course, these forms have changed over the 30 years that interplay, has changed, and not to mention that culturally there are changes when you are doing something like this in other communities or in other countries, people are going to provide their own style of leadership.
Now that's kind of, I don't know, gutsy if is the word, or risky a little bit, but you have no idea what the form is going to be, and you're just called up to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to participate.
And that's kind of nice thing, was a couple of
Yes, you
times
can just
interplay
sit back and
sessions.
witness.
But for this performance thing, you folks are going to get up and actually perform.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Do you get nervous when you do that?
Oh, well, not so much anymore, but when I first started and I was invited to be part of the, a performance group in Raleigh, Durham, yeah, I was nervous. I've never felt confident, but, it's just like when you learn the piano or you're learning, you're doing Toastmasters or whatever, practice gives you comfort and you realize you really do have something to offer.
Well, that seems a really another advantage to participating in these programs. You can really develop, I guess, your confidence
Yes.
in this as well. I mean, presentation skills, confidence, because I know, Darlene, you've certainly taken some of these skills. I don't know if you developed them through Interplay per se, but I've also seen you in several Barry Barton productions, and that was kind of a performance thing.
Yes.
But I guess Interplay helped you, I guess.
I would never have done that before I started doing interplay. And, a lot of what Barry does is uses, the interplay forms in her particular style. So, by the time I got here and got invited into Barry's shows, then I felt more comfortable.
How many forms are there?
Oh,
Ballpark.
it really depends on where you live, but somewhere in the vicinity of 24. But each of those forms, like that little Babel form thing that we just did here, I could have asked for about 7 or 8 different ways to just do that one form. So every time you come to Interplay, it is not the same. You'll always have a different experience. I have literally been in a room leading where in one corner, 2 people that have partnered together for a form are laughing with tears running down their faces. And in the opposing corner, there was a woman that had touched onto something deep, and she was expressing it with tears in her eyes.
In the same exact form?
In the same exact form. So it's what you bring to it. It's the willingness that you bring to allow yourself to be creative. As adults, we don't get so much opportunity to do that.
And then after you do the form, do you get to discuss it?
Yes, that's our noticing. I'm glad you asked that. We always stop and pause, whether it's with your partnership or coming together as the whole group in a circle, allowing ourselves to notice. I think that's one of the powerful things about interplay is noticing allows us to look inside and say, oh, when I first came in here, I was kind of upset about X, Y, and Z, and now I feel happy, because we can look inside and say that particular form really allowed me to feel like I was coming into my body for a change.
Darlene, if folks want to get information again, either about the workshop next weekend especially,
Yeah.
or about any of your monthly, I guess, workshops you call them?
Yes,
Or what do you call
Classes, workshops, yeah.
Best bet again is do what?
We have Interplay Asheville Facebook page, and then we also have a web page that's interplayasheville.org. And when you go to the interplayasheville.org webpage, there's a lot of information there that you can connect on to where is Interplay in other cities, what is the foundation of Interplay. There's some videos that you can tap onto, to the national page, which is out of San Francisco Bay Area.
And you can also sign up for the newsletter?
Absolutely, that's there too.
Okay, anyway, Darlene, I'd like to thank you for being my guest this
Thank
second
you,
half hour on the
Blaine.
Blaine's Horse Show. I'm glad you